This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at wpln.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's October 31st, 2025. Happy Halloween! I don't have a spooky story for you today. But on this day in 1971, in a town near Knoxville, one family did get an unexpected trick that was one for the ages. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. In 1971, Halloween fell on a Sunday. Most of the family of Judge John Parrott got up that morning and went to church. But not everyone. His 16-year-old son, Al, stayed home, as did the boy's grandmother. So you can imagine the surprise on Judge Parrott's face when Al ran into First Presbyterian of Strawberry Plains, frantic to find his dad. The judge later told a reporter his son's face was white with panic. And what he described was like something out of a movie. In fact, it's like something out of a specific movie that came out about 20 years later, enough so that I had to check and see if this real story was the inspiration for the opening of Donnie Darko. It was not. But anyway, here's what Al had just experienced at home. He heard a sound louder than anything he'd ever heard before. He later said the sound was so intense he couldn't comprehend it. He jumped up and tried to run out of his room, only to discover there was a huge hole in the floor of the hallway. He could hear his grandmother crying out, but she was on the other side of the destruction, and he couldn't see her for all the dust and plaster in the air. But both of them were fine, and the rooms they had been in were okay. It turns out that a Navy jet flying a routine training mission out of a base in Marietta, Georgia, had accidentally dropped a dummy missile on their house. There wasn't anything explosive or incendiary on the practice device, but it was a 900-pound object that fell from an elevation of 5,000 feet. By the time it reached their house, it had enough power by way of momentum to crash all the way through the house at an angle, ramming a hole through the roof, the attic floor, the upstairs hallway, and then out the side of the house and into a car in the driveway. No one was hurt, thankfully, but the house was deemed a total loss. In just a few minutes, it's time to reboot WPLN's beloved Curious Nashville project. That's coming up after the newscast.
Does WPLN have a number one fan? Is it you? Are you the one who heard all of the 1,100 some odd local stories that we broadcast the past year? Tip of the cap. I'm News Director Tony Gonzalez, and I know that doing this much local reporting depends on you deciding to donate. Do it for the best story you heard this year or for all 1,100. WPLN is here for good. Donate at wpln.org/give.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The number of people being deported from Nashville has grown substantially under the Trump administration. That's even as the number of people held here for allegations of being in the country illegally has stayed the same. The Nashville Banner analyzed records it obtained from the Davidson County Sheriff. Federal officials routinely review that office's booking records and have a long-standing practice of sometimes asking the county to hold someone for an extra day or two in case ICE decides to take that person into custody. Those so-called detainer requests have held steady since the Biden administration. What's changed is that substantially more people in jail on nonviolent charges are then picked up by ICE. The Banner found examples such as a man who was arrested for allegedly driving without a license. That case was dismissed, but he remained in jail on a detainer, and ICE took him into custody. According to the Prison Policy Initiative, Tennessee has the second highest rate of ICE arrests from jail. Tennessee Social Services Director said it would be impossible for the state to fill the gap in food aid that's expected to hit tomorrow. About 700,000 Tennesseans should get Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits on November 1st. But that's not happening because of the federal shutdown and political gridlock. The state's rainy day fund has more than $2 billion in it. That would more than cover the cost of November SNAP benefits, which would total less than $150 million. But Human Services Commissioner Clarence Carter says that's not an option.
Even if the legislature were to make state funds available, we don't have the ability with state funds to load the card. So you would have to create an entirely different distribution mechanism. We don't have the ability to recreate that mechanism overnight.
If your family needs help with groceries or you want to donate or volunteer, you can find resources at feedtn.org. More layoffs are in store for Middle Tennessee. That's in addition to the hundreds announced this week at GM's Spring Hill plant and a distributor for Home Depot in Laverne. In Nashville, the IT service and consulting firm NTT Data says it's laying off 108 workers by the end of the year. And in Murfreesboro, 114 workers have been let go from the Dexter Stamping Company. Before closing, it made parts for the car industry for decades. Criminal charges have been dropped against a retired police officer in Perry County. 61-year-old Larry Bushart spent the last month in jail for posts he made in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. He was arrested and charged for a Facebook post reacting to the conservative political activist's killing. He shared a quote from President Donald Trump that read, "We have to get over it," attributed to the president one day after a school shooting in Iowa. The school shares a name with Perry High School in Linden, Tennessee. Bushart was charged with making threats of violence against the school. The Tennessean reports the local district attorney dropped the charges Wednesday. It's unclear if that decision was prompted by a letter from State Representative Justin Jones, delivered that same day, calling for Bushart's release. Separately, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression had requested any records to prove claims by officials that Bushart's post had caused hysteria in the community. The parents of children killed 2 years ago in a shooting at Nashville's private Covenant School were back in court yesterday, fighting against the release of writings by the shooter, including journals and a memoir, according to court filings, saying it would be traumatic and could inspire copycats. To keep those writings from becoming public, the shooter's parents transferred their copyright to the victims' families. The Covenant parents argue that means the documents are protected and can't be released under the Tennessee Public Records Act. But a messy legal fight has followed, with a state senator, some media outlets, and a gun rights group pushing to overturn that ruling. This weekend, Cheekwood Gardens will host their 26th annual Day of the Dead celebration. WPLN's Rose Gilbert has the story.
Music, dance performances, and delicious dishes are all highlights of this local Dia de los Muertos tradition. And then there's the ancestral altars, laden with food, flowers, and photos of loved ones. Arcelia Vazquez grew up in Mexico City and has helped run this event for nearly 20 years. She explains that these altars bring together the living and the dead.
The altars is the direct connection. Even if I didn't meet some of my ancestors, when it is that time, other people start talking about them, and you ask questions. And what is the food they like? And how it's like. And even if you didn't see any picture of them, you start making like an idea how this person was.
Vasquez says that this year, organizers were concerned that the celebration could be targeted by ICE. She says that many in the Latino community are scared, but nevertheless determined to keep this connection to family and culture alive. Rose Gilbert, WPLN News.
Former Lady Vol Candace Parker was named yesterday as part of the next class of inductees to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. After playing for legendary Pat Summitt at the University of Tennessee, Parker went on to win 3 WNBA championships and 2 Olympic gold medals. Parker says the honor brings her full circle, both figuratively and geographically. The Hall of Fame is in Knoxville, just a short drive away from Thompson Bowling Arena, where she played for UT. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. About a decade ago, some folks at Nashville Public Radio started hearing about an interesting method for journalism that was being developed elsewhere in the public radio system. It centered on an online tool for asking a station's audience what kind of questions they'd like to have reporters answer. There's also a component for letting people see some of the questions that have been submitted to vote on which ones most piqued their interest. And what we could see was that the audience was sometimes asking about things the newsroom had never stopped to consider, or showing interest in topics that might have otherwise been brushed off by an assignment editor as too niche, too esoteric. Maybe, come on, everybody already knows that. Clearly not, if a lot of people were asking the question. Well, here at WPLN, Tony Gonzalez was especially interested in this new approach. He's our news director now, but at the time he was a reporter. And as the methodology known as Harken rolled out to more stations, he and others were eager for WPLN to take part. Initially, Curious Nashville was a podcast that sometimes also produced stories for the radio. And for a while, the focus was mostly on things like getting the story behind an intriguingly odd gravestone inscription or why an unusual building looked like it did. Tony oversaw the project, but all of the station's reporters took part. They developed a style of storytelling that took the listener along the reporting journey, not just telling you what they found out, but also how they found that information. 3 of the stories were even turned into puppet shows for special live storytelling events. Those were pretty epic. But over the years, Tony also discovered that the tool could be useful in other ways. For instance, in the lead up to one election, we used Harken to solicit questions about voting and access to the polls. And when the questions submitted had answers that were easy to convey or just stuff we already knew, sometimes the fact that people were asking was the push we needed to have a short radio spot on the topic. The classic Curious Nashville project kind of sputtered into a long pause as Tony's job got more and more complicated. Remember how I said he's news director now? But he never lost his hunger for the unique kind of community connection that is inherent in Curious Nashville. And so now it's being rebooted. Honestly, I think Curious Nashville is probably peak public radio. It's like the membership model, but in content form. And I know you can probably hear me saying this from about a mile away, but it's still so true. It's only possible because of listener support. Maybe I should turn the comparison the other way around. Donating at WPLN.org is a lot like submitting a question to Curious Nashville. When you do, you give us a new level of connection to you and the community as a whole. And when we work together like that, we can do more things and more interesting things than we'd ever do if just left on our own. We call this public radio because it really is a case of all kinds of people pulling together as a team to make an interesting and informative thing happen that benefits the public good. And your financial gift is just as important to that whole thing as Tony's work on Curious Nashville or mine on this podcast or Morning Edition. So as you give now at WPLN.org, here's a little something for you to listen to. This is an excerpt from yesterday's episode of This Is Nashville, announcing the Curious Nashville reboot. You're about to hear living proof of how listeners embrace this approach, lighting up our phone lines to give us some ideas for mysteries to investigate.
Well, we've been whetting your appetite with reminders of where we've been over nearly 10 years of Curious Nashville. It's a user-generated project. The better the question, the better the tale. Some of our favorite episodes have even included the asker of that question. Coming along for some of the reporting, Curious Nashville host Tony Gonzalez, our news director here at WPLN, is here to take questions live on the air, and we've got a lot of calls to get through. Join us on the air. We're going to be quick if we can, 615-760-2000, or drop a question at youtube.com/@WPLN, just in the chat there where we're streaming video. All right, let's go to the phones. Mike in Nolensville, you've been waiting patiently. What's your question?
Hey, how you doing? Give generously, people.
Well, thank you.
Kind of nervous, sorry. I was given a book called The Legend of Prince Madoc, and in that, the author claims that about 1,000 years ago, a Welsh prince made 2 trips to North America, and on his second one, he came up through the river system, up through Alabama into Tennessee and Kentucky, and the author says that the Old Stone Fort State Park down in Manchester was actually built by this Welsh prince and his crew, and that there is a rune stone, I guess you would call it, a carved stone from that wall 1,000 years ago, supposedly in the Tennessee State Museum. And I wondered if anyone could shed any light on that.
Oh man, you've got our eyebrows raised up in here.
I was at Old Stone Park 2 fall breaks ago. I mean,
yeah.
That doesn't.
I was there not too long ago myself.
That doesn't jive with the official story down there.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly intrigued.
That's an interesting book. I just need to get down to the museum and see if they can shed any light. I didn't know if you all knew.
Well, Mike, maybe we're coming with you, so hold on for a second. But thank you for the question, Mike in Nolensville. Really appreciate it. Let's take another call. Dan, you're on Curious Nashville. What's your question?
Hi, thank you. We're long-time members also.
Well, thank you.
My question was about the middle school named J.T. Moore.
I know of it.
And somebody, I think my older son, raised the question of how it was named, why it was named for him. When we looked it up, it seems like he was an author, journalist. He was an archivist for the state government, but also an ardent racist. This is around the turn of the century, early 1900s. Big proponent of the KKK and openly in favor of lynching. And so I wanted to understand more about how the school came to be named for him and what, if anything, is being done to consider updating that given the social progress over the last 100 years or so since his time.
That is quite a question. Well, and we get a lot of place name questions. Some of them end up with a very simple answer. This one sounds rather layered, nuanced. I don't know that history. I mean, that's already a lot of information. I do have some ideas of where we could go to start learning more. I believe there was a movement in the last few years to try to get the school renamed. I also know just from various city and state agencies that renaming places, I mean, there are rules and laws about that too. So that's an intriguing one.
JT Moore, we'll look into it. John Trotwood Moore. Dan, thanks for the call. We'll take another call here, but if you'd like to ask your Curious Nashville question live on air, we'd love to hear from you. The number is 615-760-2000. We still have a few minutes left. Christina from Nashville, you're on Curious Nashville. What's your question?
Well, I always have a question about that merry-go-round, but today's question is about that statue that used to be on the top of Union Station. It was Mercury, and it was there until the renovation, and until Union Station became a hotel, and it came down, was never put back up. We have a very primitive replica, I think, up there, but the original, I'm wondering where it could be.
The original. Well, good to hear from you again, and I forgot, you called with the mayor on Red Groom's Carousel. Am I wrong about that?
Yep, I want that back somewhere.
Sounds like there might be news. But you're saying there was an original that was replaced with a replica, but you think the original still exists somewhere of the statue of Mercury that was on top of Union Station?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that seems like there's probably an answer out there somewhere.
Put it on the list.
Well, thank you so much for the question. We've got a few more minutes left. We're just going to keep them coming. Matthew in Nashville, you're on Curious Nashville. What's the question?
Hey, good afternoon. This is about a record album.
Okay.
About 25 years ago, I picked this up at a church sale or yard sale. It is a program of Christmas music performed by the First American National Bank Christmas Choir of Nashville, Tennessee.
The bank choir.
The picture on the cover shows the choir singing in the lobby of the bank with the conductor of the choir standing in front of the counter with the withdrawal slips and the deposit slips. It's just adorable. So I'm wondering, what's the story behind it? How long this choir existed? When did they decide to make a record? And any other information?
Well, Music City's own bank choir, the history of it, sounds like a story we need to hear.
Yeah, we've got some music journalists who would probably be eating that one up.
All right.
It makes me wonder about the genre. Was this a genre?
The older episodes of Curious Nashville are still very much worth a listen. You can hear Tony explore the tunnels that are already under Nashville streets, meet the volunteers who take care of the beehives at Centennial Park, and find out where there used to be a nuclear fallout shelter for Tennessee's governor. That's all available in the Curious Nashville podcast feed or at curious.wpln.org, which is where you can submit your own question. And of course, WPLN.org is where you go to give to the station. We've been in a fundraising sprint this week. If you listen to us on the radio, you may have noticed that it truly has been a short one on the air this time. 2 days plus one last morning today. We wanted to honor the fact that listeners really came through for us in a big way when we had an emergency drive in August. That raised the money to offset our sudden funding hole left by the dissolution of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This time is about the regular revenue needs. After all, a fall fund drive has been an integral part to paying the bills at the station for decades now. The amazing thing about those drives is that you guys are always amazing. So thank you so much for giving. You and neighbors like you are the reason we've been able to grow the service, to revive great stuff like Curious Nashville, to develop this podcast, and to keep finding new ways of meeting our community where it is and sharing the voices and thoughts and questions of people who make Nashville and Middle Tennessee what it is. Thank you for supporting that with your donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.